My 16-year-old daughter Emma was dying of a heart attack on our driveway. The ambulance sirens wailed 3 blocks away, but they couldn't reach her. Margaret Thornfield, our HOA president, had deliberately parked her car to block the street. She smiled as she watched my daughter take her last breath. Before watching full story, comment below from where you watching. Also like and subscribe for more stories. My name is David Martinez, and I'm about to tell you the story that destroyed my family and changed my life forever. This is about my beautiful 16-year-old daughter Emma, and how one evil woman's power trip cost me everything I loved. It was a sunny Saturday morning in our quiet neighborhood of Maple Grove. Emma was excited because she had finally made the varsity cheerleading team. She was practicing her new routine in our backyard, her blonde ponytail bouncing as she jumped and spun. Her laugh filled the air like music. "Dad, watch this," she called out, attempting a difficult backflip. My heart swelled with pride watching her determination. "Be careful, sweetheart," I said, but I was smiling. Emma had always been fearless, just like her mother who we lost to cancer 3 years ago. It was just Emma and me now, and she was my entire world. That's when Margaret Thornfield appeared at our fence. Margaret was the HOA president, a bitter woman in her 60s who treated our neighborhood like her personal kingdom. She wore her authority like armor, always finding reasons to complain about something. "Mr. Martinez," she snapped, her thin lips pressed into a disapproving line. "Your daughter's noise is disturbing my afternoon tea. This kind of activity should be done at appropriate hours." I checked my watch. It was 2 p.m. on a Saturday. "Margaret, it's the middle of the afternoon. Kids are allowed to play in their own backyards," I replied calmly. Her face turned red. "Don't take that tone with me. I am the HOA president, and I will not tolerate disrespect. There will be consequences for this attitude." Emma stopped practicing and walked over. "It's okay, Dad. I can practice inside." But Margaret wasn't done. "Young lady, you need to learn respect for your elders. Your generation thinks you can do whatever you want." I felt my anger rising. "That's enough, Margaret. Don't speak to my daughter that way." Margaret's eyes narrowed. "We'll see about that." She stormed off, but not before adding, "Mark my words, Martinez. You'll regret crossing me." I should have taken that threat more seriously. Over the next few weeks, Margaret made our lives a living nightmare. She issued violation notices for everything imaginable. Our trash can was supposedly 2 inches too close to the street. Our garden gnome was labeled as inappropriate decorative elements. She even complained that Emma's bedroom light stayed on too late, calling it light pollution. Each violation came with a $50 fine. In 1 month, Margaret hit us with $800 in bogus penalties. When I challenged them at HOA meetings, she would sit there with that smug smile saying, "Rules are rules, Mr. Martinez. Perhaps you should teach your family to respect community standards." But Emma refused to let Margaret's cruelty break her spirit. She was completely focused on the upcoming state cheerleading championship. Every morning at 6 a.m. she was in our backyard practicing her routines. Her movements became more graceful and powerful with each passing day. Her coach, Mrs. Rodriguez, told me Emma had real potential for a full college scholarship. "She's got something special," Coach Rodriguez said after practice one day. "The dedication, the talent, the heart. Universities are going to fight over her." Emma was working 3 part-time jobs to save money for college application fees. She babysat for neighbors, worked weekends at the local ice cream shop, and tutored younger kids in math. Despite everything Margaret threw at us, Emma never complained, never gave up on her dreams. "Dad, what if I actually make it to nationals?" Emma asked one evening as we sat on the porch. "What if I get that full scholarship to State University?" My heart nearly burst with love and pride. "Baby girl, you're going to make it. I believe in you more than you'll ever know. Your mother would be so proud of the young woman you've become." She hugged me tight and I could smell the strawberry shampoo she always used. "I love you, Dad. Thanks for always supporting my dreams, even when things get tough." Those words would replay in my mind every single day after she was gone. Margaret's harassment escalated beyond violation notices. She started parking her car deliberately to block our driveway during Emma's practice times. When I confronted her, she would claim it was legal street parking and she had every right to park wherever she wanted on public roads. "You don't own the street, Martinez," she would sneer. "Maybe if you showed proper respect for community leadership, you wouldn't have these problems." She began reporting us for excessive noise every single day, forcing the police to come out repeatedly. The officers were always apologetic but had to respond to every complaint. "I'm sorry, Mr. Martinez," Officer Johnson said after the 8th false noise complaint that week. We know this is harassment, but our hands are tied. We have to investigate every report, no matter how ridiculous. Margaret was always watching from her window when the police arrived, that same satisfied smirk on her wrinkled face. She was enjoying this twisted game of psychological torture. Then she began following Emma. She would drive slowly behind her when Emma jogged through the neighborhood for conditioning. She would show up at Emma's workplace and complain to managers about disruptive teenagers. She even attended a cheerleading practice and tried to get Emma kicked off the team for aggressive behavior. "That woman is stalking my daughter," I told the police. "This has gone way beyond HOA disputes." But Detective Williams shook his head. "She's not breaking any laws technically. She's attending public events using public roads. We can't prove stalking without direct threats or physical contact." Margaret was too smart for that. She knew exactly how far she could push without crossing legal lines. She was a predator who understood the system and used it as her weapon. One evening, Emma came home crying after work. Margaret had spent an hour at the ice cream shop, loudly complaining about Emma's attitude problem and demanding she be fired. "She's trying to destroy everything I've worked for," Emma sobbed in my arms. "Why does she hate us so much, Dad?" I held my daughter tight, feeling helpless and furious. "Because she's a miserable person who gets pleasure from hurting others. But don't you dare let her take away your dreams. We're stronger than her hate." Emma wiped her tears and looked at me with determination that reminded me so much of her mother. "You're right, Dad. I won't let her win. I'm going to work twice as hard and show her that good people always beat bullies in the end." My brave, beautiful daughter had no idea how wrong she was about that. It was 2 weeks before the state championship when Emma first mentioned the chest pains. She was stretching after morning practice when she suddenly stopped and pressed her hand to her heart. "Just a little tight feeling," she said when I asked. "Probably just nerves about the competition." I should have taken her to the doctor immediately. But Emma was 17, healthy, athletic. Who thinks about heart problems in a teenager? The family doctor, Dr. Kim, agreed it was likely just stress and anxiety from the upcoming championship. "Athletes get performance anxiety all the time," Dr. Kim assured us. "Her heart sounds strong, blood pressure is perfect. Just keep an eye on her and make sure she's getting enough sleep." Emma was relieved. "See, Dad? I told you it was nothing. You worry too much." But the chest pains continued, getting slightly worse each day. Emma started keeping it from me, not wanting to worry me or risk being pulled from the championship team. I only found out later, after everything happened, when I read her journal. Day 12 before state. "Chest feels weird during practice. Like someone's squeezing my heart. Didn't tell Dad. He's already stressed about Margaret's latest lawsuit threat." Day 10 before state. "Pain lasted longer today. Coach noticed I was breathing hard between routines. Told her I was just pushing myself extra hard. Have to make state. Have to get that scholarship. Can't let Dad down." Day 8 before state. "Woke up with chest pain in the middle of the night. Scared to tell Dad. What if there's really something wrong? What if I can't compete? What if I lose my chance at college?" Day 5 before state. Margaret followed me to work again today. She told my manager I was unreliable and disrespectful. I'm so tired of her games. My chest hurts all the time now, but I think it's just from the stress she's causing. 2 more weeks and we'll be at state, and then I can focus on college applications and getting away from this neighborhood. Reading those entries after Emma died nearly killed me. My daughter was in pain and scared, but she suffered in silence because she didn't want to add to my burdens. She was protecting me while I failed to protect her. Margaret's psychological warfare was literally breaking my daughter's heart, and neither of us realized how literal that was becoming. Meanwhile, Margaret's behavior grew more erratic and aggressive. She began showing up at every place Emma worked or practiced, always with some complaint or criticism. She filed formal complaints with the school district about Emma's disruptive presence in the neighborhood during school hours, not knowing that Emma had early dismissal for practice. She started a petition to ban excessive athletic training in residential areas, specifically targeting Emma's backyard practice sessions. When only 3 people signed it, Margaret became furious. "This neighborhood is becoming a circus because of that family," she announced at the monthly HOA meeting. "Something needs to be done about the Martinez situation before it gets out of control." Mr. Henderson, an elderly man who had lived in the neighborhood for 30 years, stood up. "Margaret, you're talking about a teenage girl following her dreams. What's gotten into you?" Margaret's face turned purple with rage. "I am trying to maintain property values and community standards. If you people can't see that, then maybe you don't deserve the kind of neighborhood leadership I provide." That's when I realized Margaret wasn't just a bully. She was becoming genuinely unhinged, and her obsession with our family was consuming her rational mind. I should have moved us out of that neighborhood immediately. I should have recognized that Margaret was escalating towards something dangerous. But I thought we could outlast her, that Emma would graduate soon and go to college, and Margaret would find some other target for her hatred. I was so very, very wrong. It was the day before the state championship when Emma's body finally gave out. She woke up excited and nervous, practically glowing with anticipation as she ate her breakfast. "I'm going to nail that routine today, Dad," Emma said, her eyes sparkling with the same determination her mother used to have. "Coach says if we win state, the college scouts will definitely notice me. This could change everything for us." I smiled, watching her bounce around the kitchen with nervous energy. "You've got this, sweetheart. Just remember to breathe and trust your training. You've worked so hard for this moment." She kissed my forehead before heading out the door. "See you after school." "I love you, Dad." "I love you too, baby girl." Those were the last normal words we ever shared. I was at work, reviewing quarterly reports, when my phone rang at 2:47 p.m. The caller ID showed Emma's school number. "Mr. Martinez? This is Principal Adams." Emma collapsed during cheerleading practice. "She's conscious but complained of severe chest pain. We've called an ambulance. You need to get to Mercy General Hospital immediately." My world stopped spinning. I dropped everything and raced to the hospital, my hands shaking so badly I could barely grip the steering wheel. Emma was 17, athletic, healthy. This had to be some kind of mistake, maybe dehydration or exhaustion from overtraining. But when I arrived at the emergency room, the doctor's grave faces told me everything I didn't want to know. "Mr. Martinez, your daughter suffered what appears to be a heart attack," Dr. Patterson explained, his voice gentle but serious. "At her age it's extremely rare, but it happened. Her heart stopped for nearly 4 minutes before paramedics got it beating again. She's stable now, but we need to run extensive tests to understand why this occurred." I felt like I was drowning. But she's so young. She's an athlete. How is this possible? Sometimes there are underlying conditions we don't detect until something like this happens. The important thing right now is that she's alive and fighting. I sat by Emma's bedside for the next 18 hours, holding her hand, watching monitors, praying to every deity I could remember. She looked so small and fragile, surrounded by machines and wires, nothing like the powerful, graceful girl who had been perfecting her routines just hours earlier. When Emma finally opened her eyes, her first words broke my heart. "Did we win state?" she whispered weakly. I laughed through my tears. "Baby girl, you just concentrate on getting better. That's the only championship that matters right now." "But the scholarship," she started to say. "There will be other scholarships, other opportunities. The only thing I care about is that you're alive." Emma spent the next 5 days in the cardiac ICU while doctors ran test after test. They discovered she had a rare genetic condition called hypertrophic cardiomyopathy. Basically, her heart muscle was too thick, making it harder for her heart to pump blood efficiently. It was the kind of condition that could go undetected for years until stress or intense physical activity triggered a cardiac event. "The good news," Dr. Patterson explained, "is that with medication and lifestyle changes she can live a normal life. The bad news is that her competitive cheerleading days are over. Any high-intensity athletic activity could trigger another event." Emma took the news better than I expected. "So I'll find a different dream," she said with that brave smile that reminded me so much of her mother. "Maybe I was meant to tell stories instead of performing them. Maybe I'll become a journalist and write about athletes instead of being one." My daughter's resilience amazed me. Even lying in a hospital bed with her dreams shattered, she was already planning her next chapter. The cheerleading team came to visit, bringing flowers and handmade cards. Emma's best friend Sarah cried more than Emma did. "You are going to be team captain next year," Sarah sobbed. "It's not fair." "Life isn't fair," Emma replied, squeezing Sarah's hand. "But that doesn't mean we stop fighting. You're going to be an amazing captain, and I'll be your biggest cheerleader from the stands." When we finally brought Emma home after 8 days in the hospital, I thought the worst was behind us. I was naive enough to believe that even someone as cruel as Margaret Thornfield would have some compassion for a teenager who had just survived a heart attack. I was wrong about that too. The day we brought Emma home from the hospital, the entire neighborhood came out to welcome her back. Mrs. Henderson had baked Emma's favorite chocolate chip cookies. The Johnson family brought balloons and a welcome home banner. Even families I barely knew stopped by with flowers and well wishes. Everyone except Margaret, who watched from behind her curtains with that same cold, hateful expression. Look at all these people who love you, I told Emma as we sat on the porch, overwhelmed by our neighbor's kindness. Emma smiled, but I could see the exhaustion in her eyes. Don't let her get to you, Dad, she said, noticing my tension when I glanced at Margaret's window. We're stronger than her hate. My daughter was teaching me about forgiveness and grace, even after everything Margaret had put us through. I should have listened to Emma's wisdom and found a way to rise above Margaret's cruelty. Instead, I let my guard down. I thought maybe the near tragedy had touched even Margaret's cold heart. I thought maybe she would finally leave us alone. I was catastrophically wrong. Margaret waited exactly 1 week before starting her campaign again. This time, her cruelty reached levels I didn't think any human being was capable of. It started with a violation notice taped to our door. Excessive medical equipment visible from street creates unsightly neighborhood appearance. She was complaining about the wheelchair ramp the hospital had recommended we install temporarily while Emma regained her strength. Then came the complaint about Emma's presence at home during school hours. Margaret didn't know that Emma was on extended medical leave with modified schedules. She filed formal complaints with the truancy office, forcing Emma to provide medical documentation to prove she wasn't skipping school. She's making me feel like a criminal for being sick, Emma told me one evening, tears in her eyes. I have to carry a doctor's note everywhere I go just to prove I'm allowed to be alive. But Margaret's cruelest attack was yet to come. She began parking her car strategically to block the ambulance route through our narrow street. Our neighborhood had only one way in and out. Maple Grove Lane was a dead-end street with houses packed closely together. Margaret would position her car right at the choke point where the street narrowed, making it impossible for emergency vehicles to pass. When I confronted her about it, she smiled that evil smile I'd grown to hate. It's a public street, Martinez. I have every right to park anywhere I want. If you don't like it, maybe you should move somewhere more suitable for your daughter's medical needs. The way she said medical needs made my blood boil. She was mocking Emma's heart condition. You can't block emergency vehicle access, Margaret. If Emma has another episode. Then I guess you better hope she doesn't, Margaret interrupted, that smile growing wider. Or maybe you should teach your family to show proper respect for community leadership. Amazing how many problems could be solved with a simple apology. I realized then that Margaret was holding Emma's life hostage. She wanted me to grovel, to publicly humiliate myself and my daughter, to acknowledge her power over us. She was using Emma's heart condition as leverage in her sick psychological game. What do you want from us? I asked, hating myself for even engaging with her twisted logic. I want you to stand up at the next HOA meeting and apologize to the entire community for the disruption your family has caused. I want you to admit that I was right to enforce community standards. I want your daughter to write a letter thanking me for teaching her about respect and consequences. The demands were insane, humiliating, designed to break our spirits completely. And if we do this, you'll leave us alone? Margaret's laugh was like glass breaking. Oh, David, this is just the beginning. Your family needs to learn that actions have consequences. And I'm going to be the one teaching you that lesson for as long as it takes. That night, I called a security company about installing cameras around our property. I also researched emergency response protocols and discovered that Margaret's parking strategy was indeed illegal, but only if we could prove it was intentional obstruction. I should have called the police immediately. I should have documented everything. I should have moved my family out of that neighborhood that very week. Instead, I thought I could handle Margaret Thornfield on my own. I thought I could protect my daughter from a woman who had already proven she was willing to use life-and-death situations as weapons in her personal war against us. Emma was getting stronger every day, but she was also getting more worried about Margaret's escalating behavior. Dad, what if she really does block an ambulance? Emma asked one night as we watched Margaret deliberately park across the street entrance for the third time that week. That won't happen, baby girl. I won't let it happen. But we both knew I was making a promise I might not be able to keep. Margaret held all the cards in this twisted game, and she was clearly building toward something bigger, something worse than anything she had done before. 2 weeks later, I found out exactly what that something was. March 15th started like any other Tuesday. Emma was feeling good, strong enough to help me make breakfast. She was laughing at something on her phone when she suddenly stopped. Dad, my chest feels weird, she said, her hand moving to her heart. I was immediately alert. Weird how? Pressure? Like, tight. Really tight. Her face was pale and sweat beaded on her forehead. We're going to the hospital. Right now. I grabbed my keys and helped Emma to the car, but before we could get to the driveway she collapsed. Dad, she gasped, clutching her chest. I can't. I can't breathe. I dropped to my knees beside her, pulling out my phone to call 911. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely dial. 911, what's your emergency? My daughter is having a heart attack. She's 16, she had one before, she's having another one. We need an ambulance right now. Sir, calm down. What's your address? 472 Maple Grove Lane. Please hurry. She's not breathing right. An ambulance is being dispatched. Stay on the line with me. Emma's eyes were wide with terror. Dad, I'm scared. I don't want to die. You're not going to die, baby girl. Help is coming. Just hold on. I could hear the sirens in the distance getting closer. Emma was struggling to breathe, her lips starting to turn blue. That's when I saw Margaret. She had moved her car directly across the entrance to our street. The ambulance was there, sirens wailing, but they couldn't get through. Margaret! I screamed. Move your car. The ambulance can't get through. She stood beside her car, arms crossed, that same evil smile on her face. Move your car, please, one of the paramedics shouted through a bullhorn. We have a medical emergency. Margaret cupped her ear, pretending she couldn't hear. Move your car. I was screaming, holding my dying daughter. Please? She's dying. Margaret looked straight at me, then at Emma gasping for air in my arms and shook her head slowly. Sir, the 911 operator was saying, the ambulance is having trouble accessing your street. I know. There's a woman blocking them. Please do something. The paramedics were getting out of the ambulance, grabbing their equipment, preparing to run the 3 blocks to our house. 3 blocks that might as well have been 3 miles for a dying girl. Dad, Emma whispered, her voice barely audible. Tell Mom I love her. No. Don't you dare say goodbye to me. Fight, Emma. Fight. But I could see it in her eyes. She was slipping away. The paramedics ran those 3 blocks in record time, but it felt like hours. Emma was unconscious when they reached us, her heart beating irregularly. How long has she been like this? The lead paramedic asked while they worked. 7 minutes since she collapsed. Maybe 8. They worked frantically, administering medication, trying to stabilize her heart rhythm. We need to get her to the hospital immediately. Is there any way to clear that street? By now, police had arrived and were dealing with Margaret, who was suddenly claiming her car had mechanical problems and wouldn't start. But it was too late. Emma's heart stopped completely at 3:23 p.m. The paramedics worked on her for another 20 minutes, both at our house and in the ambulance. They managed to get her heart beating again twice, but it wouldn't stay stable. At Mercy General Hospital, the doctors tried everything. But the damage was too severe. Emma's brain had been without oxygen for too long during those critical minutes when the ambulance couldn't reach her. At 4:47 p.m., Dr. Patterson, the same doctor who had saved her life 3 months earlier, came out with tears in his eyes. Mr. Martinez, I'm so sorry. We did everything we could. The world ended. My beautiful, brave, brilliant daughter was gone. And Margaret Thornfield had killed her as surely as if she had put a gun to Emma's head. Emma's funeral was 3 days later. The entire neighborhood came except for one person. Margaret stayed in her house, curtains drawn, as if she could hide from what she had done. The cheerleading team performed Emma's favorite routine at the service. Her coach spoke about her dedication and dream of helping others. Her best friend Sarah read a poem Emma had written about never giving up. But all I could think about were those 3 minutes. 3 minutes when my daughter was dying and an ambulance sat blocked by one woman's evil heart. As they lowered Emma's casket into the ground, I made a promise. I'm going to make sure everyone knows what you did, Margaret. I'm going to make sure you pay for taking my daughter away from me. After the funeral, people kept coming up to me whispering the same thing. We all know what Margaret did. That woman is evil. You should sue her. There has to be justice for Emma. But the police said there wasn't enough evidence to charge Margaret with a crime. She claims her car broke down, Detective Williams explained. Without proof of intent, we can't make a case. Her car was fine when she moved it 20 minutes later, I protested. I know, sir. We all know. But legally we need more. That's when I realized the law wouldn't give me justice. I would have to find another way. I hired a private investigator named Jake Morrison. Jake was a former cop who specialized in cases the police couldn't or wouldn't pursue. I'll find the truth, he promised. If Margaret Thornfield murdered your daughter, I'll prove it. Jake's investigation revealed things that made my blood boil. Margaret had been planning this for months. She had researched emergency response times in our neighborhood. She had timed how long it took ambulances to navigate our streets. She had even called 911 with fake emergencies to test response protocols. This woman studied every detail, Jake reported. She knew exactly what would happen if she blocked that street. Jake also discovered that Margaret had done this before. In her previous neighborhood, she had blocked a fire truck responding to a house fire. A family dog died in that fire. The family moved away afterward and no charges were ever filed. She's a serial killer who uses bureaucracy and timing as her weapons, Jake concluded. She gets off on having power over life and death. The most damning evidence came from Margaret's own computer. Jake had a contact in tech who recovered deleted emails and search histories. Margaret had been researching heart attack symptoms and survival rates. She had specifically looked up information about teenage cardiac arrest and recovery times. She had planned Emma's murder. I called a neighborhood meeting at the community center. Nearly 200 people showed up, including residents from surrounding areas who had heard Emma's story. I stood up and told them everything. About Margaret's harassment, about Emma's first heart attack, about the blocked ambulance, and about Jake's investigation. By the time I finished, there wasn't a dry eye in the room. Margaret Thornfield killed my daughter, I said. The police can't prove it legally, but we all know the truth. The question is, what are we going to do about it? Mrs. Patterson, an elderly woman who had lived in the neighborhood for 40 years, stood up. That woman has terrorized this community long enough. She ran the Hendersons out of their home with fake violations. She made the Johnson family's life hell when their son was deployed overseas. Emma's murder was just her latest victim. One by one, people shared their stories of Margaret's cruelty. The disabled veteran she reported for having his service dog in the yard. The single mother she harassed for working night shifts. The elderly man she cited for having medical equipment visible through his window. She's a bully and a murderer, said Tom Williams, whose wife Margaret had tormented during her chemotherapy treatments. It's time to fight back. We formed what we called Emma's Army. Our mission was simple: make Margaret Thornfield's life as miserable as she had made ours, and eventually drive her out of the neighborhood. We started with legal pressure. Every single violation Margaret had ever issued was challenged through proper HOA channels. Turns out, most of them were bogus, issued without proper authority or procedure. A lawyer named Jennifer Knox, whose own daughter was Emma's age, volunteered to help us for free. She filed complaints with the state HOA regulatory board and discovered that Margaret had been embezzling HOA funds for years. We can get her removed from the HOA presidency and possibly face criminal charges for theft, Jennifer explained. But that's not enough, is it? She was right. Legal justice felt hollow when my daughter was still dead. Meanwhile, Emma's Army implemented a campaign of perfectly legal harassment. We organized daily protests in front of Margaret's house, holding signs with Emma's picture and the words "Margaret Thornfield killed this girl." We made sure to stay on public property, following all permit requirements. We had Margaret's car towed every time she parked even slightly illegally. We reported every minor code violation at her property. We requested police wellness checks whenever her lights stayed on too late, claiming we were concerned for her well-being. Margaret tried to call the police about harassment, but everything we did was completely legal. How does it feel, Margaret? I shouted during one of our protests. How does it feel to have your life controlled by someone else's rules? After 6 weeks of constant pressure, Margaret was visibly cracking. She had lost 30 pounds, her hair was falling out, and she looked like she aged 10 years. She stopped leaving her house except for absolute necessities. But she still wouldn't admit what she had done. That changed when Channel 7 News picked up Emma's story. Reporter Sarah Chin did a month-long investigation into Emma's death and Margaret's history of harassment. The story went viral nationally. HOA Karen blocks ambulance, teenager dies, was trending on social media for a week. Margaret's photo was everywhere, labeled as a murderer. Her employer fired her. Her own children released a statement disowning her actions. The pressure finally broke her. I was at Emma's grave on the 3-month anniversary of her death when my phone rang. It was Jake. David, you need to see this. Margaret just confessed everything on a Facebook live stream. She's having a complete mental breakdown. I rushed home and watched the video Jake had saved. Margaret was sitting in her kitchen, crying and rambling incoherently. I didn't mean for her to die, she sobbed. I just wanted to teach them a lesson. I wanted them to know I was in charge. But she died and now everyone hates me and I can't take it anymore. She admitted to deliberately blocking the ambulance. She admitted to planning it in advance. She admitted to researching Emma's medical condition to maximize the damage. I killed that girl, Margaret cried. I killed Emma and I can't undo it and I wish I was dead. The video had over 2 million views before Facebook took it down. Margaret's confession changed everything. The district attorney reopened the case and charged her with voluntary manslaughter and reckless endangerment. She was arrested that same day. The trial lasted 3 months. Margaret's defense attorney tried to claim she was mentally ill, but Jake's evidence showed clear premeditation and planning. The confession video was played for the jury 17 times. I testified about Emma's dreams, her courage, her love for life. I told the jury about the daughter who wanted to tell stories and help people, who survived one heart attack only to die because of one woman's cruelty. Emma Martinez was murdered, I told the jury. Not with a gun or a knife but with bureaucracy and hatred. Margaret Thornfield used her position of power to kill my daughter, and she needs to pay for that crime. The jury deliberated for less than 4 hours. Guilty on all charges. Margaret was sentenced to 15 years in prison without possibility of parole. As they led her away in handcuffs, she looked at me one final time. "I'm sorry," she mouthed. I didn't respond. Sorry wouldn't bring Emma back. After the trial, I sold our house and moved away from Maple Grove. I couldn't stay in the place where my daughter died. But I didn't move far. I used the money from selling the house to start the Emma Martinez Foundation for Emergency Access Rights. Our mission is to prevent what happened to Emma from happening to anyone else. We've successfully lobbied for state laws requiring emergency vehicle access in residential areas. We've gotten HOA regulations changed to prevent abuse of power. We've helped families fight back against HOA bullies in 12 states. Most importantly, we've saved lives. Last month, a family in Texas contacted us. Their HOA president was trying to block emergency vehicle access during a power dispute. Because of Emma's law, the legislation we got passed in her memory, that president was arrested before anyone got hurt. Emma's story has been told in documentaries, books, and news specials. She's become a symbol for fighting back against petty tyrants who abuse their authority. But all the justice in the world won't bring back my daughter. 2 years after Margaret's sentencing, I decided to visit her in prison. I'm not sure why. Maybe I needed closure. Maybe I wanted to see her broken. Maybe I hoped to find some peace. Margaret looked terrible. Prison had aged her 20 years. Her hair was completely gray, her face was gaunt, and her eyes held a haunted look that would never go away. "Why did you come here?" she asked. "I'm not sure," I answered honestly. "Maybe to see if you understand what you did." Margaret was quiet for a long time. When she finally spoke, her voice was barely a whisper. "I think about her every day. I dream about her every night. I see her face when I close my eyes." "Good," I said. "You should." "I was so angry all the time," Margaret continued. "At everyone. At life. At getting old. At feeling powerless. And your daughter. She was so young, so happy, so full of hope. I hated that. I hated that she had what I'd lost. So you killed her." Margaret nodded, tears streaming down her face. "I killed her. And I killed myself too. This isn't living. This is just existing with the weight of what I did." I stood to leave. "Mr. Martinez," Margaret called. "I know this doesn't matter, but Emma was a good girl. She was everything I pretended to be protecting in the neighborhood. She was everything good that I destroyed." I stopped at the door but didn't turn around. "You're right, Margaret. It doesn't matter. Today marks 5 years since Emma died. I'm remarried now to a wonderful woman named Lisa who understands that Emma will always be a part of my life. We have a 2-year-old son named David Jr. and another baby on the way. Emma would have graduated from college this year. She would have been 21, probably working at a newspaper or maybe grad school studying journalism. She might have had a boyfriend I would have pretended not to like. She might have been planning her own wedding or career. All those possibilities died on that street when a bitter woman decided her petty authority was worth more than a child's life. But Emma's story didn't end with her death. Her legacy has protected countless families. The laws passed in her name have saved lives. The foundation continues to fight for emergency access rights and against HOA abuse. Margaret Thornfield sits in a cell, serving her sentence, haunted by what she did. She gets out in 10 years, but she'll never be free from the weight of taking an innocent life. The neighborhood where we used to live has changed completely. New families moved in, families who know Emma's story and make sure it never happens again. There's a memorial garden where Margaret's house used to stand. The city seized it for unpaid taxes and liens after she went to prison. Emma's grave is covered with flowers every week. Her cheerleading team still visits. Her friends, now college graduates, still leave letters telling her about their lives. she touches people who never even met her. Sometimes people ask me if I've forgiven Margaret Thornfield. The answer is complicated. I've forgiven her enough to move forward with my life, to find love again, to build something positive from tragedy. But I will never forget what she did, and I will never stop fighting to make sure it doesn't happen to another family. Emma would have wanted me to find peace. She would have wanted me to help people, to build something beautiful from something terrible. She would have wanted her death to mean something. And it does. Every emergency access law passed in her name means something. Every HOA bully stopped by the foundation means something. Every family that doesn't have to lose a child because an ambulance can reach them in time means something. Margaret Thornfield thought she was teaching us about power and authority. Instead, she taught us about community, about standing up for what's right, about turning tragedy into purpose. Emma Martinez died on March 15th, but her story continues to save lives. Her light was extinguished by one woman's darkness, but that light has multiplied into thousands of others. My daughter wanted to tell stories that mattered. Through her death, she's told the most important story of all, that good can triumph over evil, that communities can come together against bullies, and that love is stronger than hate. Margaret Thornfield killed my daughter's body, but she could never kill Emma's spirit. Emma's spirit lives on in every family we help, every law we pass, every life we save. And Margaret Thornfield will spend the rest of her life knowing that she destroyed the one thing she claimed to protect, the safety and well-being of her community. Her legacy is death and hatred. Emma's legacy is life and love. In the end, Emma won. That has to be enough.